So listen, the usual suspects would be your Walker Zimmermans, your Aaron Long, even though I know he takes a lot of criticism. I don't think that there was any question as to whether he was going to be on this roster. Anthony Robinson on that left back position, and Serginho Dest. Then there was some question, although I think DeAndre Yedlin, who was the only player, by the way, in this 26 that played in a World Cup 2 cycles ago. So again, this is the youngest team going to a World Cup. That is part of the whole narrative of this team, and I think ultimately part of what is going to make them interesting and ultimately good. But there is some experience when it comes to that. The amount of outside backs, evidently, that we are taking to this World Cup, and outside backs that can play both right and the left when you're talking about a Joe Scally or a Serginho Dest, that is interesting. But let's get right to, first off, Tim Ream, because this was the talk now over the last couple of months. Tim Ream is nothing new. We know exactly who Tim Ream is. He's a starting center back in the EPL, left-footed player, not the fleetest of foot. Every player has their goods and their bads, their positives and negatives, but certainly after the last window and Aaron Long not playing well, to have somebody like Tim Ream now come back into the fold who wasn't included in that last window, again, I think that this shows the wheels turning in Gregg Berhalter's head and the pragmatism. And even when people were telling him, why aren't you taking Tim Ream? Why aren't you taking Tim Ream? Rather than pushing that aside, because he hears everything. They all hear everything. I think he said, sometimes the simplest and clearest decision is the right one. Yeah. And so maybe that's why.
I think every description you use for Tim Ream is why he's on this roster. And the biggest questions about this group and who is going to be starting for me were goalkeeper up until the last couple of months, center back alongside Walker Zimmerman, and center forward. I think the rest of the team kind of picks itself. And what Tim Ream does for me as a part of this roster is he's a guy that is going to give you a consistently high level no matter what. You can depend on him for what will be the youngest roster at the World Cup. You now have a 35-year-old experienced player that's played for the last 10 seasons in England between the Championship and the Premier League, playing at a very high level this year in the Premier League against a lot of the guys that you were going to see in that second match against England, and even the first match against Wales. The starting striker, potentially Kiefer Moore, plays for Bournemouth. Fulham have played against Bournemouth in both Championship and Premier League. So I actually love the Tim Ream inclusion because of all the other options. If it's going to be Aaron Long or Carter Vickers alongside Walker Zimmerman, if we're assuming that Walker Zimmerman is the starter, Tim Ream, I want him starting that first game against Wales because I just think he gives the team a presence at the back. He's a guy that young guys can look around to that isn't going to be fazed by that moment. It's going to be his first World Cup, of course, but he has experience with the group. He's got experience in the Premier League, and I think ultimately that's not a surprising decision for me as much as potentially Shaq Moore. I'm not sure if you feel the same way, Mosse.
Well, first off, let's remember, center back is the one position where the U.S. got really dinged injury-wise. They lost Miles Robinson and Chris Richards, two guys who I think would have definitely been in the squad. So I think that's what got Tim Ream in, and rightly so. I agree with these two. I think he should be in there.